Before we get started, I first want to congratulate you guys. You're the first graduating charter school in Washington State. So that's a huge accomplishment, and it's been really cool to see how your school is set up differently. I attended a public school, and even like the mentorship thing that you guys have like every Wednesday, that was incredible. I wish I would have had that in high school, but I just think it's really cool what your leaders have done. I think big round of applause to Malia and is it Stefan?
Yeah.
Stefan? They really, really care about you guys. That's like the two takeaways I got are the students really care about school, and the teachers really invest and care about the students, which is like the perfect environment for learning. So I'm really excited for you guys, and today our biggest goal is to just honor the work that you put in and to honor the charter school and the success that it is to be the first graduating senior class in Washington State, and you went through a lot of hurdles to get there, so congrats. And we had a scholarship that we gave out, and we're awarding 2 winners for that, each $2,500. So to give you a little background, we started forming a relationship with Summit Sierra last year. We had Carson, I think it was just Carson, and a couple of our other board members who are not here today come and do a volunteer day. So they flipped one of your conference rooms, or it was a storage room.
How the Nook transformed this year? Mm-hmm. Yes, they did that work in the Nook. It was amazing. Went from being like this crazy storage closet situation to like a full functioning space that we sometimes use as a classroom.
So last year we did that, and then we came back this year, and today we had the opportunity to meet with some students and help them with some work they were doing, and then we added our scholarship on this year, and we wanted to also feed you guys and give you a little bit of a taste of what WPC does and who Young Professionals are, and then talk to you about how to succeed in life after high school. So after we announce the scholarship winners today, we're going to talk about that, and you guys feel free to make it like a conversation. At the end, we're going to open it up for Q&A. Don't be shy. Ask any questions you want to. We have some great Young Professionals board members here who have experience and are leaders in their industry, so really take advantage of that. Washington Policy Center, if you guys haven't heard of it before, is a free market think tank who focuses on statewide policy issues. So we do research and disperse our findings to general public, the media, legislators, and our goal really is to make Washington State a better place to live, do business, and raise a family. And then Young Professionals, which is the program that I lead, and our board members who will come up are a part of the Young Professionals group. We are aimed at educating, engaging, and empowering young people, so anyone ages 18 to 40. And so you guys aren't there yet, but when you graduate, if you ever want to join, we are statewide, so we're in Seattle, Tri-Cities, and in Spokane. So we do all kinds of events. This is actually the only event we do with charter schools. Summit Sierra came up. I'm not sure how it did in the first place, but we're really glad to form a relationship with the school, so thank you for allowing us to be here today. So with that, we are going to, I want to recognize a couple of our scholarship sponsors for that. So our WPC board members and our YP board members have actually sustained this scholarship for at least 4 years. So if you're a junior in the room and want to apply next year, you can do that. We have with us the Apex Foundation. Remind me Bruce's last name.
McCaw.
Bruce McCaw is a WPC supporter, and we have Marshall Santa in the back, and Marshall's with the Apex Foundation here today. So if you could have the opportunity to talk to him afterwards, I would encourage you to do that. They were our biggest supporters for this scholarship, so it's a huge deal. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your support. You will meet, actually, if you're a YP board member, can you raise your hand? Or a committee member, Shelby? So you have Matt, Shelby, Ryan, Carson, Nathan, Rimmer, and I'd really encourage you to talk to them. Afterwards, we have Kayla. Kayla North is in the back. She's our SU club vice president. And so we have college clubs and then statewide YP programs. So if you ever at SU, if any of you go there next year, you should connect with Kayla. So with that, we're going to get started and announce our scholarship winners. Yep. This is Dan Mead-Smith, the president of Washington Policy Center, and he's going to start us off there.
Yeah, and I want to offer my congratulations as well. It's fantastic what you've done over the 4 years at Summit Sierra, and we're excited about where this will take you on your next endeavor. As Miranda said, we're a public policy think tank, so we're in the ideas business. We present ideas to elected officials who then sometimes act on them, and charter schools is a great example of that. Leave Finna, Leave, raise your hand. Leave is our education director, so we work on 8 different policy areas, and Leave heads up our education center. And several years ago, she said, 40 other states around the country have public charter schools. Why don't we have them in Washington State? So we wrote a study on that, and legislators paid attention to it, and we had members of both Republican and Democrat parties engaged on trying to bring charter schools to Washington State. And then in 2012, a year after our study came out, it was on the ballot. So every November, you'll start voting. Now, when you turn 18, you'll vote on different ballot measures, and this voters around the state voted to bring in charter schools. So that's why you have Summit Sierra and 12 other schools around the state, is because of people have an idea and they bring it to the legislature and they bring it before voters. It sounds really easy, but it took a lot of work, but that's more or less how it worked. And I think it's a good encouraging story, is that this is where policies happen. All the different policies that take place in our state, including creating schools like this, come from people like you who have ideas and bring them to us, and then we work on them and get them before voters, and voters passed it. So there's been other hurdles along the way, you might know, but it was great that last year the Supreme Court of our state kind of validated and said charter schools are legal and constitutional and they should remain open, which is very exciting. And we continue to work on the charter schools issue. We worked on it again this year in the legislature, and we're hoping to expand and have more Summit Sierras all over the state. You may have heard that they just the Charter School Commission in our state just announced 4 new charter schools. So there'll be 4 new charter schools opening next fall. Is that right, Leave? Yeah, in Bellingham and Bremerton, another one in Seattle. So it's great that they're expanding across the state. So that's a little bit about what we do and about the power of ideas, that ideas have consequences and they can. You have a question?
Do you know the difference between a charter school and a public school? What makes a charter school so significant that you want to go put it up to legislation?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, in fact, Leave, do you want to just briefly answer that? I mean, firstly, charter schools are public schools, but there's a difference between a traditional public school and a public charter school.
The best way to say it is that charter schools have the freedom to do what the kids need to learn. That's really the simplest way to say it, but it obviously is super complex, because charter schools are independently run from the district headquarters, and they don't have to follow a lot of the state laws that the traditional schools have to follow and are constrained and suffocated by. So it's like a free school where the principal is chosen by the board and can be replaced if she's no good. Of course, you would never replace your principal. But she then controls who the teachers are, and she makes sure that you have only the best teachers in your classroom, and that power is super, is big. And that's what they are.
Yeah.
And this is the class that fought to save. You all went to Olympia, so you all fought to save your school. And we were writing like mad in support on blogs and in editorials and testifying. So we were there to help you, but it was your voices that saved charter schools. And for you and for all the children that come after you. And it's tremendous what you've experienced in this school. I think you are so fortunate to be part of the founding class and to be the graduating class of this school.
Yeah.
You're very fortunate young people.
That's a great way to explain it. And as Miranda mentioned, that you had a mentoring program that you're all in, and so you have the flexibility to kind of change the curriculum a little bit. So not every school can have a mentoring program, and that can spend part of the day going through your essays and editing. So that the flexibility that you have at Summit Sierra is different than some traditional public schools. So with that, let me announce our scholarship. We have 2 scholarship recipients, and as Miranda said, that we are going to at least do it for the next 4 years, and hopefully we'll be able to increase the scholarship as well. But we're thrilled to recognize all the students that applied. Over 20 students applied for the scholarship, and I already know that the first recipient is not here, unfortunately. It sounds like he is off looking at housing options for his university in the fall. So we're going to come back and present it to Alistar Bruback. All you guys know Alistar. So it's exciting that he's our first recipient, and I'll just mention a couple things about him. You guys all know him very well, but I was thrilled to hear that he had 15,000 followers on social media. I mean, I wish Washington Policy Center had that many followers. That's pretty impressive. And it was a great story when we interviewed the 7 finalists. Maybe some of you were the finalists last week, but it's a great story of that. I think he would admit that maybe he wasn't getting the best grades when he first started, and now I think he has a 3.9 GPA. He's taken 4 AP courses. It's pretty impressive what he's been able to do, and. This is reading from his endorsement letter from his environmental science teacher. He says, "It's students like Alistar that make me want to be a better teacher, to work harder." That's quite an endorsement when your teacher says that about you. Alistar is easily in the top 15% of students I have ever taught. I have not met a student like Alistar, and that's why I recommend him. So that's the kind of student that we want to encourage and support. So I will give Alistar his scholarship, and most importantly, arrange for the contribution to be made to his school. Mm-hmm. And then our second recipient, who I think is here, is Queen Johnson. So congratulations. That's very exciting. Yeah.
Congratulations. Here you go.
Yeah. That to you. And reading from some of her great accomplishments, she's a great story. She's the first woman in her family to go to college, which is very exciting. And this is from your principal. Her remarkable ability to respond to challenges with persistence and meticulous work rather than discouragement is rare. She told a great story about how she's helped her fellow students. She formed this club, and what's the name of the club? The Harmony Club, which is great. It's a great way to bring encouragement and positive attitudes to students and her fellow classmates. And it sounds like it's not been an easy road for you. So congratulations on what you've done in the last 4 years, and this will hopefully help in your college endeavors. So congratulations. Yeah. So thank you again, and we'll turn over to our panel.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And Queen, tell us what you're going to do after high school.
I will be attending Virginia State University, and I'll either be majoring in political science or psychology.
Oh, that's great.
Awesome.
Good. Yeah, that's great.
Congrats.
Yeah.
Well, definitely stay connected with us, especially if your major is political science.
Yeah, that's a good
you
match.
Probably can connect on some things. So, okay, panelists, can you come up? We're going to transition into our little life and leadership panel. So be thinking of questions as we talk.
For the video, yeah. Okay. Yeah, not so they can hear you.
So
Got it.
I'm going to introduce each of them briefly. Carson Bolin is on our Young Professionals board. I'm going to let them tell you what they do. Shelby, how do you pronounce your last name?
Esau
is on one of our committees, and then Nathan Rimmer is also on our Young Professionals board and our main WPC board. So first question for them is, tell us what you do and how you got there in 2 minutes. 2 to 3 minutes to 4 minutes.
All right, am I going first?
Yes.
All right, hang on to that. Pass that around. So as Miranda said, my name is Carson Bolin. I work in commercial real estate development. So you guys, when we're downtown, you see a lot of those cranes swinging around the city. So those are high-rise office, high-rise, multifamily, hospitality. So I work to acquire land, build those buildings and then bring in either tenants or office leases or sell them at some point. That type of work is highly political, but also highly finance oriented. So there's numbers, but then there's a lot of politics. And so I didn't fully appreciate when I was in university. I studied finance and poli-sci, and then followed one track down the poli-sci, and then that ended for me, and then jumped into the finance and followed that, and now I get to marry the two together, and it's pretty fulfilling. So you don't always know when you're an undergrad how this thing is going to work out called your career, but it can come together in a pretty cool way, and it can be pretty unexpected too.
All right. So I'm a business performance advisor with a company called Insperity out of Bellevue. We work with small to medium-sized businesses in the whole greater Washington state area. We partner with them on infrastructure pieces. So I saw you guys had HR managers written up here, so I love that. We work in HR. We're all about the people of any organization. We think that they're the biggest asset. So I got there kind of a twisted route. I sold steel for a while, some random jobs here and there. But I'd say that the basis of getting there was relationships, was networking, was knowing and keeping in good standing with great people.
Do this here. Let's make this into one here. Good idea. So I'm Nathan Rimmer. I work for a company called Pistol Creek. We're affiliated with the Apex Foundation. We're a family office that manages investments, all types. Mostly what I work with is our commercial real estate. And I've actually got a little bit of overlap with both of these guys in that I do work in the commercial real estate, not so much kind of like high-rise development, but we just do more kind of general business, if you will, and some development work. But also I'll echo the importance of relationships and sort of how I ended up in my job. This isn't kind of a career path that I think anybody would say that they would chart out and go forward, but it just happened through a series of relationships and sticking with it and meeting good people and knowing good people and showing up and being honest and being straightforward and following through with the things that I said I would do sort of led me into something that's become a career that's, I think, beyond what I certainly would have imagined when I was in high school, given kind of the background and where I came from. So it's really exciting to see the charter schools. I think that really some of the alternative options within the quote public school system in the state are important. I went to Running Start as well. I know that some of your fellow students here are also part of that. And so I think that having a diversity of options is just critically important in the state. So that's kind of why I'm here and have helped support this, and glad to be here and help answer questions.
Thanks. All right, so the next question, and you can just popcorn around or answer however you'd like, but what would be your biggest piece of advice to the students here on succeeding in life after high school?
Are you eager?
So I hit some of that, but
Okay.
I'll let you guys.
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is values, and this branches off of relationships, but I think that whatever your values may be, whatever those end up being, just being very clear about why you have them and letting that dictate your choices. I think that for me, it takes time to develop those outside of maybe your parents or people that raised you, but developing those and knowing to your core why you're doing what you're doing, I think is what led me to where I'm at. And I think that the world that's around us is so distracting and it's in our face all the time. And if we don't have those solid core values to come back to, I think you can get swayed a lot of different ways and end up somewhere where you don't want to be. So I think that for me was a very strong point.
Awesome. So these are some things that I've just kind of picked up since I've been in high school. And I think that one maybe overlooked is you make a decision every morning when you get out of bed, whether you're going to be a success or not. And you get to win that day over and over and over again. Yesterday at that point doesn't matter. You make that decision when you roll out of bed, you make your bed, and then start your day as a success, get that first win. So that's been huge. It's so psychological. It's like right off the bat. But I'd say that 3 things that have been really important for me to be a continuous success. I love mentorship, that you guys value that. That has had a multiplying effect in my life, meaning taking you from this level, skipping steps, jumping up to another tier. Find those mentors, find those people you're like, I want to be like that person. Call them, say, let's go get coffee, I'll buy the coffee. They'll buy it, you know. And then pick their brain and like say, hey, can we do this once a month? And then get 3 of those people and figure out who's going to work, who's not, and then just do life with them. So that's the first one. The second one is read. Keep reading. Like, read everything. There's this great quote about the person who never reads lives 1 life. If you read, you leave 1,000 lives. And so you get to get all this experience, all this accumulated wisdom. And then the third one, we need this like more and more, is listen. Like, you know, God gave us 2 ears, 1 mouth for a reason. So use those ears and listen to everyone around us. You know, so when we were here earlier today, we got to listen to you guys, which is cool. I got to hear about what people are going to do, you know, where they're applying, where they're going to school next year. And I learned, you know, so I'm better because I listened to you guys earlier today. So do those 3 things: mentorship, read, and listen. Pretty basic, and then just win every day. So thanks.
Do you have anything to add?
I think maybe just, these guys have hit a lot of these points, but I think one of the things is a lot of introspection too, you know, looking at what are the things I can change to, again, these things kind of sound basic and they sort of maybe even sound abstract sometimes, but these are the things I've found that have really helped me get from maybe where I started to where I am now. And that's not necessarily looking at like, what are the problems that somebody else is maybe doing, but like, what is it that I can do to change myself and my situation? You know, control the things that you can control. You know, kind of Carson was saying, wake up every day and think about like, okay, what am I going to do with this day? And rather than looking at what, if somebody else did something, this would benefit me. How about this thing that I do for myself? How can I go out and improve my situation? And then I don't have to worry so much about the other things that are around me. And you sort of start to shape your own world that way. And a lot of it is just kind of psychological, and it really is powerful.
Yeah. And if I could add to that, I just did a panel discussion a couple weeks ago on the different generations, and you guys are all part of Generation Z. And so I actually did research and studied why generations think like they do. And a big mark of your generation is you were born with phones. Like from when you were little, you had access to phones. Most of you, I would say, would. I guess raise your hands if you had access to phones since you were like 5 or 6. Yeah. So most Generation Z did, and their parents are very familiar with technology, so raise their kids up in that. And because of that, it's harder to read because we have lots of distractions, and we have the instant gratification of videos and scrolling and liking, and there's just many distractions that have some positive effects, but also some negative effects. So I would just really emphasize Carson's advice to you guys to read and to really think about where you're spending your time and how it's affecting you in your mind. Because oftentimes, like, we do it and don't even think, like, what is this doing, like, subconsciously every day as I take in all these images and videos. And oftentimes reading is really the way to learn and grow. So I would encourage you to do that as well. So next question would be, what's the greatest challenge or failure you've experienced, and how did you overcome it?
All right, well, I guess since I'm holding the hot mic, the greatest failure or challenge, I think probably for me, growing up early without having a dad in the house was really hard, and it was something that I had to spend a lot of time on, you know, and I talk about the introspection. That's not something I could change, but it was something I had to work through, and through mentorship and through fellowship and through people in my life, was able to, again, kind of overcome that and not worry about those things that were outside of your control that you couldn't control, kind of getting back to what I mentioned there. So, yeah, you had a question? I have, yeah. I have, and I was fortunate that I had other father figures in my life that was really helpful. So I don't know if any of you guys can relate to that, maybe, but it's I think what Carson was saying about really mentorship and fellowship as well, and just having those positive role models in your life. I think that there really is a role for both mothers and fathers in someone's life, and so again, it's taken a lot, but you can do it, right? There's nothing that's holding you back. There's so many opportunities that are in front of you, really, in this country. That and I think it's one of the reasons I believe so strongly in Washington Policy Center, and the idea of like empowering people through the marketplace, through themselves, to improve their situation, improve their life.
Yeah, and there are people out there who want to invest in you, like, whether you know them right now or feel like there aren't any out there. There absolutely are, and our organization has so many board members, and some of our top donors really seek to invest and be whatever they can to the younger generation to see them succeed. So they're out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point. So one failure that I experienced that was during my undergrad experience was that as I was getting closer to graduation, so I was a senior, you have a certain class load and you got to check different credits off. And I had banked on the fact that I would be able to take this one particular class in business school spring of my senior year, so pushing it to the last minute, and turns out the class was full. And there's no way I wanted to come back for another year or another semester. And so I was panicked. You get that flushed feeling where your face goes red and you start sweating profusely. And I didn't know what to do. And it reminds me of the fact that, thinking outside the box is kind of a cliche, but I sat down and I was just like, look, all right, I need this credit. What would happen if I wrote my own, course curriculum and found a professor, sponsor it? I was like, I don't even know if they can do that. But there's no harm in asking. And it ended up being one of my favorite classes I ever took. It was one-on-one with a professor, so very similar to what you guys have. And then when I went to apply for jobs, it was actually a class that I could point back to and the story behind it. And it really resonated with people, and it saw this kind of overcoming of adversity, small adversity, but adversity. And so that was meaningful to me, because it shows when you hit that door, look for a ways around it, look for that window, climb through it and get around. But I definitely was really panicked for a little bit, so my parents would have been really mad.
I'm going back and forth between two things, but I would say that comparison is a challenge. This isn't a one-time thing, right? It's just a challenge that I think that I continue to come up against throughout my career. And I spent 3 years in a job that was very much not what I wanted to be doing, and taught me a lot of discipline. And in hindsight, I can see that it was a very, very good experience, but kind of hated it the whole time. And I think that just understanding, if I could tell myself, what you're doing is significant. It may not be what you see other people doing and what you want to do long term and all of that, but what you're doing now is developing a lot in you, and you're affecting people in the process, and just accepting where you are today. Maybe that's not where you want to be long term, but understanding that you can still build there, you can still be in a job that maybe isn't the best or where you want to be, but being content in that and being the best you can be every day when you wake up in that situation. It's a constant challenge, right? It's always something new that you want to be better at. But I think that the comparison
your first job isn't going to be out of college.
Maybe your first few.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not the identification that you think, some people might have their dream job, but so your advice would be to kind of stick it through and be present where you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everyone's on a different journey.
Another one?
The other one was, I thought this might be relevant. I had an anxiety attack out of college in my first job, and I never expected to deal with something like that. And I think that, thank you, appreciate it. I think that just having grace for yourself in those times and in those seasons. And again, that brings me back to my first point of values. And for me, it's faith and it's community and all that. But just realizing that you're going to fail, and you're going to fail big sometimes. And just not putting too much pressure on yourself to be perfect and all that. So I guess they kind of go hand in hand. But
Yeah, thank you guys. So any questions from you guys? It can be something they've already talked about. It can be something completely different. Do you guys, can they ask, are you open books? Can they ask anything? Awesome. Okay, in the back.
So I have anxiety problems too, and I've been in situations where I've been encouraged to go and network and meet with people and ask for opportunities, but I shy away because I'm scared of, like, I don't know, just it all seems like a lot like talking about yourself and then probing other people, so I don't really know how to appropriately do that. Do you have any tips around that?
I mean, it's a process, right? And I'm in a job that's very heavily network, get out there, be in front of people. And I think that I would say just take small steps and small wins. I think that's a really good piece of advice. And my big thing is just have grace for yourself. If it's too much today, maybe scale it back, right? But I think that also the biggest successes come from being uncomfortable and stepping into that fear and feeling it and being okay with it, and surrounding yourself with people that are going to build you up and tell you how great you are and that you're going to succeed and you're going to do great is a huge piece too.
I would add just literally just showing up. Just go do it. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen by going, and I think sometimes we can get in our own ways, right? We can be our own worst enemies and thinking like, I can't do this, or you come up with excuses why not to show up to something, or preoccupy yourself with something else that's really not that important. And, recognizing that not every one of those connections that you make is going to necessarily lead to something, but it's, nobody bats 1,000, right? I mean, you just got to swing and you got to get out there and you got to try, and something's going to stick over time. Someone's going to recognize you for who you are, the things you're interested in. Surround yourself with people that are interested in those kind of things as well, and just go connect with people that are, I guess, that you look up to, and don't miss out on the opportunities when people offer.
I would add one other thing. All they can say is no. And if they do, that's more of a reflection on them. Maybe they're too busy, or they don't, they're not willing to invest in other people. And your self-worth and value is totally intact. If they say no, it doesn't affect your value at all. And you just keep moving on and keep moving forward. And then if you do get a yes, I would say over-prepare. So keep a Post-it in your pocket with questions in case, there's an awkward silence or something. And then research that person and just be prepared so you can have a good conversation right away. And a really good tool is when you meet someone, just ask them, what do you do? Tell me about yourself. And then you get those laps and you get really comfortable with that. So I think that's all they can say is no. Yeah.
Your head shot up earlier too. Yeah.
I was just wondering, what had led to the anxiety attack? Because I recently had an anxiety attack for the first time. It was quite frightening. Everyone around me was like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" They were scared for me. I was scared for me. So I was just hearing someone else go through it. I just want to know,
Yeah, it's so funny. I wasn't planning on sharing that at all, so I don't know what's going on. But I think that I was spread too thin. I wasn't sleeping enough. I was pushing myself too hard. So I think respecting the fact that you're a human and, again, giving yourself grace. It's just when you go too hard, I think that's when those things start to happen. And I was just overwhelmed, right? Life can get overwhelming. And I think that I didn't know what was happening to me. And so just being okay with asking for help and kind of explaining that situation, I don't know, I guess that was what I needed. I needed to come out with it and say, this is what I'm dealing with, and talking through it made it more okay, I think. I don't know if that helps at all, but it's a process. And I think that having good people in your life and building up those relationships, they can help anyone get through it, right? I don't know if that helps.
Yeah.
What would you say to somebody who doesn't necessarily have that support at home, like doesn't have that foundation, like what they want to do in their life or like who they are as a person?
Maybe do you want to start with that one?
Sure. I mean, I think just finding somebody, right? I mean, and you keep coming back to things like mentorship, but find somebody positive, right? I mean, I think that's the key. I look at there's always this sort of tug in good and evil, right? And we can be, especially when you're looking for somebody, you need that help, that support, that foundation. It's easy to fall into the trap of negativity, of sort of blaming other people, kind of getting back to what I was talking about, sort of externalizing your problems and really figure out, okay, well, how can I surround myself with better people? How can I surround myself with more positive people? How can I surround myself with people who want to build things up rather than sort of tear things down? I would honestly, I mean, I don't know if you, it sounds like you have a good community here. You've got good mentors, you've got good teachers. I find a lot of that in my church as well. If that's for you, is great community. I think that just finding people, even somebody that you maybe work for, possibly a boss or somebody like that, taking a job, and then finding a good boss and somebody who, people always want good people, right? That's one thing I've learned being in business and hiring people and bringing people in is like you always want good people, and you will always be in demand if you're a good worker who shows up, who works hard, who's honest. You'll just have people like trying to get you to like be their mentee, right? And so, that's what I would offer.
I think that's a really good question, and I think from my personal experience, I have my people here in Seattle, but I've lived in other cities like Washington, D.C. and New York, and I didn't have people. I moved there, and it gets lonely, and like life happens to you, and even with all this technology, you don't have someone that's in front of you, and so I learned two things. I learned asking someone, even if you don't know them that well, to be that person in your life, and it feels weird. You're like, hey, can I open up to you a little bit? And then the second one is also hard because it feels out of sequence, but being that person for someone else, then you create a safe space with them and you can have that sharing. And so I've had to do that just by moving to new cities and not having a network. But investing in your network will create a more balanced person, and we all know this, but like we can forget about it sometimes. So when life is hard or like a job doesn't work out well or something, you have that safety net, that foundation to fall back on. That's really important to have people around you. So being the person for someone else and then just being like, hey man, can I talk to you for a little bit? I need a friend, So.
And if you don't even know where to start, you're like, I don't have anyone around me right now. I mean, you could talk to your teachers. You could ask your teachers if they could recommend someone. I'm sure you could even ask your teachers directly, like, hey, would you mentor me like one-on-one? Or ask your principal if she could connect you with someone. Or there's amazing social and what's the word? Philanthropic groups around Seattle. There's Washington Policy Centers. We actually have a Young Professionals mentorship program, and that's for when you are 18. So join us and we'll get you plugged in with someone. But there are definitely things out there. You just have to find them.
Yeah, and I would add, we've all been at Trader Joe's before. They have the free coffee and the sample. Well, I go to Trader Joe's on Sunday afternoons, and the lady who serves coffee, like she's one of those people for me. I'm like, I didn't know her, but like you can tell if someone in their eyes like is a good person if they care, and we have that for each other. So we see each other once a week, and I'll drink 3 or 4 cups of coffee while I'm standing there, and we just we chat and catch up, and we're tracking each other's lives. So it doesn't have to be this formal thing, and we go deep. So it's cool, so there isn't one way to do it.
Yeah, there's those people like Carson who can talk to anyone, anywhere, and become friends with them. So find a Carson.
But yeah, there's people like Carson all over, right? And I mean, there are people that care about people.
Yeah,
and it doesn't matter
sure.
where you're at, what life stage, all of that. I think there's a lot of people that are willing to be there for you. So.
Definitely. Okay, any other questions? Lee?
What would you tell young people today that are thinking about going on for their education?
what are the skills that the world is looking for you to develop so that you're in a position where people want to hire you?
Well, I think I hit on a little bit before. I mean, it was like, really when you're young, it's just showing up, being on time, being honest, doing a good job, just being punctual. I mean, really, it's like the basics in these early stages as you guys go off into your careers, right? You're going to start college, go into your careers. I mean,
Those are general characteristics that every worker has to have, but in terms of actual knowledge, and that's what I'm getting at.
I think, yeah, and I think, I mean, you can't, reading good books is, you can't, I mean, the idea of virtue, I mean, that's another general idea, yes. Right? But, I mean, I don't know, whatever it is, I mean, you're wearing an aeronautics science something shirt, like, if that interests you, like, get into aeronautics, right? Like, go to a specialized program that focuses on something that you're really interested in, because then you are going to be more likely to do those things, those generalist things when you're in a specialty that you enjoy. So just finding that thing that kind of gets you excited in the morning when you wake up.
I would say that one thing I think would probably set you apart going forward is because you guys we didn't have phones quite yet, right? But the technology, the phones, all the stuff that is not a human being in front of you, I think hinders your ability to engage and communicate well. And I think that is, while it's kind of abstract, I think that's a skill that you can hone and really differentiate yourself from other people, because I think a lot of people fall back on the ease of email, text, everything that we can do to communicate now that's not face-to-face. So eye contact, being confident, all that stuff that gets harder and harder as the more technology comes into our lives, I think is a good skill.
Yeah. I would add one that we were working on this morning upstairs is writing. So writing clearly. We've hired people, we work with people, you're not texting when you're writing, a memo or an email or whatnot. So being able to put thought into it, and then once you finish it, go back to the beginning and read it again. It's just such a simple step and costs you nothing, and it will give you everything. Go for it.
For me, I hate emailing people if I have the ability to walk up to them and talk to them face to face. Because I feel for me, it's easier and it helps build an emotional connection to saying, this is what I need. This, in my eyes, you can see the emotions of why I need this. And then I can see in their eyes, do they understand what I need? And with email, it's all very black and white. You can't see, oh, this is what I'm feeling. You could put exclamations and italics and infer the author's purpose of why they said this in their email. Yeah. But it's also the way that humans communicate, only 20% of it is the verbal, the rest is the body language. So it's the eyes, it's the eyebrows, it's how are you standing? It's how are you standing, how are you sitting? Communication is more than just texting and calling somebody, it's having that face-to-face communication. And when someone's saying to just email somebody, that feels almost impersonal and ingenuine for me and my personality.
Yeah, I love that. So here, I'll tell you what I do, and I think it's pretty powerful, is not always can you go talk to them in person. So if you're doing it on the phone, you still pick up a lot of that inflection in the voice tone and maybe the emotion. So I'll have a conversation either in person or via the phone, and then I'll recap that via email. So have the conversation, and then that way you have the accountability and the paper trail and whatnot, but you get all that emotion up front and the good communication. So I think that's worked really well for me, because I do like to talk, obviously. So.
We have a question in the back.
How do you all, as people of European descent, use your privilege your privilege to help children of color, specifically Black children and Hispanic children?
So my grandmother's Mexican, so I don't know if that makes a difference to your question or not. look, I've seen them. I mean, it's funny. I have cousins that people don't even, they like, you can't believe you guys are like related, right?
Same.
It's funny, but, and you know, I think for me, what that's done is it's kind of breaks down that barrier, that idea. Like, I don't think it ever hurt me, you know, maybe, you know, I don't look as Mexican as my cousins or something, but I haven't really seen it hurt them. You know, I have a whole side of my family that is very much brown skinned, and you know, I think through their own values and through it hasn't hurt them. So I guess maybe I'll disagree a little bit with the premise of the question, just because I've seen it in my own family, my own situation. But I think part of it too is I've talked to other people, you know, really of color and whatnot, friends of mine, black friends of mine, who said, you know, James, a good friend, said, I realized from an early age, like I had to act differently, right? I had to enunciate my words better. I had to pull up my pants more. I had to be a little bit more respectful, and I just recognized that was something I needed to do. And he's one of the best guys I know. I mean, and he's got a great career at Starbucks, and he's doing well. And so I think I would say take your life in your own hands. Really, would be the best advice I could give anyone.
Okay, so my answer will be a little bit different. I work with Friends of the Children, which is an incredible nonprofit. Some of their A-board, so they put mentors in at-risk youth lives, which has been incredible. It fundamentally makes generational change. So it's a generation of family of poverty, and that mentorship absolutely changes things. So that work's been amazing, working with people definitely from very different backgrounds. I will say that WPC, a lot of the policy work that we are doing is aimed at giving everyone a great shot, and I think that everyone else here can speak to that more than I can. But I think that the heart of this organization is really to just see people for being people, right? And not seeing the differentiation, but giving everyone the ability to have a great family, to have a great life. So I think a lot of the policy work that they're doing is in efforts to support that. And I would say that it's a different time, right? I think that when I was raised, I was raised around a decent amount of diversity, but I didn't see it as diversity the way that it's seen now. I mean, it's people, right? And I'm faith-based, so we're all about just loving people. It's not, I mean, it really was, I think back then, a lot easier to not see color. I mean, really, it was a different time, and I think that I just saw my friend as being my friend, right? And so getting back to that, and through, I don't know, maybe it's Christianity at its core, just loving people for who they are, I think is my personal answer.
Yeah, I think the question's a good one, and I think that that you know, you're looking at a panel right now that doesn't necessarily reflect the demographic of this school, and I think that so that's good. I'm really happy that you asked. I think that the biggest gap that I see that I work on is more of an opportunity gap, and I think that that's really apparent in certain neighborhoods in our city. And so I spend time down in the Rainier Valley quite a bit, and there's a big benefit to people that have had families that show you what's possible. You know, so I've heard it described as getting up to the mountaintop so you can see what's out there. You know, if you're down, you know, working hard every day and you can't see what that opportunity is, how do you know what to follow? Like, how do you know what your dreams could be? So, you know, people of all backgrounds, I think that we help through the WPC and through our own work, just helping people have choice, helping people to have options. And charter schools is a huge example of that too. I'd say for me in my life, I'm a scoutmaster with a troop. And the boys are much more reflective of your guys' demographic here. They're down in Hillman City. And I'm with those guys once a week, and we go out in the mountains once a month. And that's special time and special opportunity. Two of the guys, actually, Isaac and Roger, are students here, if you guys know them. Yeah, Rod. Roger's great, yeah. So he can be a little crazy, but he's a good guy. He likes pocket knives and fire. So don't tell him I said that. But yeah, so I think, and that backs into like stewardship. So if you're given something, like help those around you. You have a business can be a platform too for like if you're successful, like help bring other people along. Don't just focus on yourself. And that's a tired, lonely path to walk if people are just focusing on their own selves. So that's how I try to approach it.
Okay, one last question.
I don't have a question.
Oh.
I know I'm not on the panel. I don't know if I can.
Okay, yeah, you're a board member. Go for it.
Cool.
So I just wanted to touch on that because I think I understand what you're saying. I think to me, I believe white privilege is 100% a real thing. I didn't think it used to be. And my brother's married to an African American. I have mixed nephews and nieces. And so as they've been growing up, it's really been brought in. We have big family discussions, and they're not easy discussions always, right? It's tough discussions about what my sister-in-law grew up with and what potentially my nieces and nephews grew up with. They grow up in a privileged family themselves, but them being people of color still is something. So I think for myself at our company, we're probably 70% Hispanic. So culture is a big thing, talking about culture. But really letting other people know what white privilege, I wrote a paper on white privilege 2 years ago. Understanding what it is. It's not just, I get a job easier than somebody. It's my sister, when she's younger, being able to go to the grocery store and buy makeup that's her skin color. And other people of color being more difficult, that's white privilege, right? So it's not just, I can get a job or I can do this. It's those little things that some people don't see. So for me, I look at that as a way to educate other people, my brother educating me and my family, that it is real, not just that persona of what you think white privilege is, those little tiny things that you may not think of every day. Going to, you have braids in your hair, you can't just go to Rite Aid and buy that kind of stuff. There's stores for that, right? So why can't you just go buy something like that? That's a privilege that we're not, that it doesn't affect us. So helping other people understand that is real, I think is something that, for myself, I'm able to teach others. So.
Yeah. And I would also say, so I be careful how you use the word though, like when you say that to people, because I've been told that before with no one knowing like any of my past and what's happened in my family and all of that. So I think at the same time, be very sensitive when you use that to someone, because to an extent, we've all been through hardships and we all have disadvantages that we can't relate to each other on. Like we all have our own stories and we all go through things, and I echo what you say, but I'm just adding to that, just acknowledging like at some point, like we're all victims of something. I'm a victim of a really dysfunctional family back in Ohio. And I'm sure a lot of you are, but like if you saw me and know me, like you would probably think, oh, she's had a perfect life, like because I have a bubbly personality or whatever it is. But like just be careful when you stereotype people with that. Yes, and
I do just want to clarify, when I say white privilege, like he just said, not saying that the specific word privileged, but you do benefit from white privilege. Like he said, you guys can go to a store and get whatever hair product you need. I have to go to a specific store. You guys can walk down the street and be perfectly fine. You guys can walk into a store and not be followed by a security guard. Half of us in here have probably been followed by a security guard just because of the color of our skin. So I'm not saying that you are privileged, but I am saying that white privilege is something that you do benefit from. And yeah, that's just, so I'm not saying the specific word.
I'm echoing what Matt said as well, and like acknowledging what you said. I'm just saying, just also be cognizant of everyone has a story, and I think like when you're talking to people and looking at people, like understanding that can help us have compassion for everyone versus like targeting people and groups. And so,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah.
I have compassion for everyone. Anyone in here can say that I have compassion for everyone. I'm like, me saying that you benefit from white privilege, that has nothing to do with your personality. I'm not saying that you're a bad person. I'm not saying any of you are bad people. I'm just saying that there's a benefit that comes to you that doesn't come to me, or Queen, or Sunrise, or Morasia, like people in here. It doesn't come to me like it comes to you. So absolutely, compassion, empathy, I'm all there. Like, I'm empathetic, I'm compassionate, I help people out whenever I can. I'm just saying that you all do benefit from
Yeah, and we recognize that.
Yeah, and that's a very large conversation. But thank you for the question, and we need to wrap it up. It's 1:20 or 2:20?
One last question?
One last question?
Yeah.
Okay, one quick last question. But who's it from?
It wasn't a question. I was actually going to comment on this. I leave it to you if there's time for that.
I think we should wrap it up. Oh, Marshall.
I was going to say, maybe a way to address this is the free market values or principles that are at the heart of WPC. In the marketplace, you can create things that are shared or traded or whatever mutual. So the structural things that seem to be imposed in ours, often through a collectivist or a sort of a government-driven thing, can actually, often you see in our country and all over the world, if you travel and see how people trade and build things of value productively amongst themselves through voluntary associations, which is kind of at the heart of freedom, but in a lot of things that if you're kind of trapped in a complex or things are structurally oppressive, the way that solutions are often introduced is through the marketplace, through free people trading with each other things of value. And there's a morality to that, where two people are on the same plane and they're trading something that each of them benefits from. And so it's one of the reasons I think we support WPC is people of all backgrounds, all races, all everything have a chance to be part of that marketplace. And that's what we really are about, is providing opportunities for.
And this, to end it, that was a great way to end this. This school is a great example of that, giving students opportunity who otherwise wouldn't. So thanks again, you guys, for coming. If you want to talk to us afterwards and follow up with some questions, I think we'll stick around for a little bit. So there's Matt, Marshall, and then Ryan, and then Kayla in the back. So we'd love to talk with you more. Thanks for your great questions, and see you next year.
Thanks.
Do you want this one?